Thank you so much. Is this audible? Yeah,
Oh,
it's
you're
good.
totally audible.
Yeah. Okay. So glad to be here. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Meredith. Thank you. Wonderful workshop. We had a really good class today, and thank you for your poems, and to the Seattle community for being such a great poetry city. You know, just love coming here, love visiting, and it seems every few years. I told Christine and John from Open Books, yay, Open Books, my heroes, yay. Get all your books there. You know, you don't have to order from other places. You can get them from a bookstore, and really just making it a poetry community. In many ways, Wave Books and the wonderful poets who are here. So I thought I'd read into our kind of subject at hand, which I had announced as a weekend about, you know, poetry, activism, innovation in poetic form, spiritual adventurishness, and eco-poetics, and generally feminist concerns in poetry, but really just trying to carry poetry in many different directions. So I thought I'd read just across several places in my work. And today Paul asked me to read a poem from Practical Water that I will start with because it is the child, this is dedicated to a child, Helena Sint, who's the daughter of a friend of mine in Berkeley, and it just happens to be her birthday, and the fact that Paul asked for it was interesting, and just a great case of synchronicity. The kind of rough theme of my reading tonight, or just one of the ways I was configuring it, was just asking you to go into yourself and your poetic practice with a permission to be strange. So this is the title poem here, Permission to be Strange. Triangular shadows arrive on your wall with music from the street behind them. Like you, they are from autumn between those spirits, not from anything. They need you to see them finding width and depth from noon or moon, these figures eking thought around vines in a time of violence, leaking fact into eternity. You are given permission to be strange in these outlines from the vat of what you feel. They walk the wall, rinsed and rosy, not from anything. You make energy matter and individual with lines between parts of experience. Conductivity, the gray fur of feeling, wild from anything. So, permission to be strange, and in some ways, we talked last night about how politics and activism and poetry intersect in this place of uncertainty. And to me, one of the sources of greatest interest and experience is realizing how odd your perceptions are. And so you go into, you know, an experiential kind of place in a city, for instance, and you think you know your neighborhood, but you really don't necessarily. You're kind of re-experiencing it. Bob and I lived in Berlin for about 4 months, and I was thinking a lot about the two different sides of buildings and how the air is really different on one side of a building than the other. And I don't mean just temperature-wise, I mean like the whole spiritual quality of a building is different on one side than the other, and that has to do with angles and corners. So anyway, this is in Pieces of Air. Street corner. There was an angle where I went for centuries, not as a self or feature, but exhaled as a knowing brick, tradesmen engineered for blunt or close recall. Soundly there, meanings grew, past a second terror, finding their way as evenings, hearing the peppermint noise of sparrows, landing like spare dreams of citizens where abstraction and the real could merge. We had crossed the red forest, we had recognized a weird lodge. We could have said, song outlasts poetry, words are breath bricks to support the guardless singing project. We could have meant song outlasts poetry. There's something sort of poignant about poetry readings because it takes such a short time to read something, and you've sort of slaved over it to make it like just exactly right, and then it's just like takes a minute and a half, and you just go, oh shit, how about work? And it doesn't even show. So that was a Berlin poem, and I thought I'd make a kind of a slippage between the two books and read another Berlin poem. This poem was written based on an incident in Berlin, and it's a partita, and a partita is a musical form that uses elements in kind of like a fugue, but in more regular ways. So a lot of the things that are found in the first stanza here are also found in the second, and this is dedicated to Czesław Miłosz and Barbara Guest, who passed away in short time between. Partita for sparrows. We bury the sparrows of Europe with found instruments, their breasts light as an ounce of tea, where we had seen them off the path, their twin speeds of shyness and notched wings near the pawnbroker's house by the canal, in average neighborhoods of the resistors, or in markets of princely delphinium and flax, flying from awnings at unmarked rates to fetch crumbs from our table, half spinning back to clefts of grillwork on external stairs we would descend much later. In rainy neighborhoods of the resistors, where streets were taken one by one, where consciousness is a stair or path, we mark their domains with notched sticks of hickory or chestnut or ash, because our cities of princely pallor should not have unmarked graves. Lyric work, flight of arch, death bridge, from which pattern being is parallel. They came as if from the margins of a painting, their average hearts half spinning our little hourglass upon the screen. And we were talking today about fragment and poetry, and this is the title poem of Practical Water, and it's based on, I was thinking about going to places where you're really familiar with the landscape and trying to have a new experience every time. There's a place where Bob and I run in Tilden Park, and we go there to run, and I'm so familiar with it that I tend to get sort of numb to it. And then one day, it just seemed entirely new all of a sudden. And I had been starting work with Code Pink, and I was kind of coming out of a depression, and I was just astonished at how different everything seemed. Practical Water. What does it mean to live a moral life? It is nearly impossible to think about this. We went down to the creek. The sides were filled with tiny, watery activities. The mind was split and mended, each perception divided into more. And there were in the hearts of the water molecules little branches perpendicular to thought. Had lobbied the Congress, but it was dead. Had written to the Committee on Understanding. Had written to the middle of the middle class, but it was drinking. Had voted in cafes with shoplifters and beekeepers, stirring tea made of water hitched to the green arc. An ethics occurs at the edge of what we know. The creek goes underground about here. The spirits offer us a world of origins. Owl takes its call from the drawer of the sky. Unusually warm global warming day out. A tiny droplet shines on a leaf, and there your creek is found. It has borrowed something to link itself to others. We carry ourselves through the day in code, DNA like Raskolnikov's staircase, neither good nor bad in itself. Lower frequencies are the mind. What happened to the creek is what happened to the sentence in the 20th century. It got social underground. You should make yourself uncomfortable. If not you, who? Thrush comes out from the cottony coyote bush, clink-a-clink, trunk-trink, churr, turns a golden eyebrow to the ground. We run past the plant that smells like taco sauce, recite words for water, Viter, Vader, Vitar, Botan, Boda, insert all languages here. Poor Rambo didn't know how to live, but knew how to act. Red-legged frog in the pond sounds like him. Uncomfortable and say a spell, blossom knit and heel affix, fiddle fern in the neck of the sun. It's hard to be water, to fall from faucets with fangs, to lie under trawlers as horizons, but you must. Your species can't say it. You have to do spells and tag them. Uncomfortable and act like you mean it. Go to the world. Where is it? Go there. And so I'll read a couple poems from the section. There's a second section of this book has poems that have to do with these activities in Congress, which often consisted of just kind of trying to have a different experience from the average experience of either setting your heart against what was happening in Congress or trying to join in and be complicit in the sense that it could be changed in the way that they wanted it to be changed. And I felt as if I sort of would hallucinate, that it would do some good. So, yeah, so there was this practice of hallucination that I developed. And I'm going to read in a House Subcommittee on Electronic Surveillance. Water is the goddess there. They were, as you probably know, they were doing illegal wiretapping for a long time. You know, when they first, I mean, they're still doing it, but they were doing it with no regard for following legal means to get the permission to do the surveillance. And so I went to the committees, the hearings that had to do with the surveillance acts, because I was really interested in the Fourth Amendment and still am, and how it was being raped. In a House Subcommittee on Electronic Surveillance, it would be lovely to ask water to investigate domestic spying, so I put myself in a trance right here in Congress holding a bottle of H2O from California, so when the Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General reads, "Probable cause to believe," the water shakes its curly geyser brain, and when he says, "Need to close the gaps," it shakes ×3 until the letters break and splash on the floor of the Rayburn building. Oh, during the report about reading your email. Maybe it's not your email. From the second row, it's possible to see white ridges in his thumbnails when he holds, "Surveillance has to be reasonable," as the prong-prong molecules of water trickle through the carpet to find the vault where the Electronic Surveillance Modernization Act, the Terrorist Surveillance Act, the National Security Surveillance Act, and the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Improvement and Enhancement Act are stashed to hide them from the mobs of 1772. There's a secret in every act down here. I hear some water interview the ants who make the basic laws of the land, and while the deputy reads, "Ferret out terrorists," the water interviews the ferret under Capitol Mall that can't quite streamline operations in the ruddy soil. Perspective is gained. The trance method seems to be working well. I can see half a heart in each congressman. I can see the deputy has a shaving cut and a sunbeam shining through the skin of his left ear. It's feeling rather prone, the light. It's pink, the color of winter robin's legs, that makes me want not to hate him. It's the tendency of light to change itself. He probably has 2 kids and lives in Fairfax, near where Whitman's mockingbird spends winters. He was sprinkled with birth. His death floats near the secrets he can't read. There's a clue in every word down there. When he says has to be reasonable, the droplets splash their skinny necks and swelling Buddha bellies and break to make Capitol Hill spell I toll or top all ill. You at home, what do you feel? You can vote by calling 1-900. It's either too fucking late or too early. There's a secret in every century that likes it if you shout. There is time for our little secret. There is space for the secret spilling out.